two loud sounds at once, like it offsets one or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
No, I'm willing to co-sign that.
Okay.
I'm not willing to co-sign a lease or anything though, so don't ask again.
I've got good credit and good finances, so kind of fucked up. If you ask me.
We'll talk. Like, I know you and Kelsey needed that third vacation home, but I don't know. I keep telling you,
for sure.
you're trying to live the Twitch streamer life when you're a YouTuber, and it's just not going to work out.
Yeah, one day maybe I'll reach that point where I can call myself a streamer, but until then,
stick with me, kid. You'll go places. But hello there, everyone, and welcome to Tapcaf Transmissions, the only Star Wars podcast that features both me, Corey, and my co-host, Mr. Justin EckhartsLadder. No last name.
The only for now, but who knows? There might be something exciting on the horizon.
Well, if anyone ever decides to ask us onto their podcast, then maybe we'll guest. Maybe we'll even guest together. Wouldn't that be exciting?
That would be exciting. That would be interesting. Or if we ever made a podcast to cover different topics, like I know you want to start that Red Pill podcast.
Oh my God. No, I was even just going to say, like, is it because they're all too embarrassed to be seen with us? And then you say shit like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So today we are talking about the High Republic in the first book that has come out in that new era / series / multimedia project, Light of the Jedi. We were originally hoping to have some guests for this one, but they actually, both Alex from Star Wars Explained and Mark from the Template Institute, just messaged us right before to tell us that we are actually embarrassing disgraces, and actually just that they're busy. They didn't say that. People are going to believe that if I say that. They didn't say that. We're all friends. And
they did say we legitimately have better things to do, so maybe next time.
Yeah, that is that was the implication of what they were doing. But
no, they did try to make it work. Bless them, but it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to that because I think it would have been a good discussion. But instead, people get to listen to us again.
Yeah, and just as a kind of preview of what. If you ever listen to their reviews, Alex really loved the book, and Mark couldn't get through it.
Yeah,
he really hated it.
And I think both of us kind of fall, more in the middle.
I think we're pretty close on opinion for this one, based on. Oh, I just knocked over my little Christmas tree. That's a little baby Jesus saying, "Put that shit away." It's January 14th. Smarten up, buddy.
You got to get the Valentine's tree out.
With Valentine's tree, that's something special between a man and his wife, okay? We'll talk about that on stream.
Again, we're embarrassing people, and this is why we're not on any other podcasts. Really, I think it's I want to just throw this out there. I think it's entirely your fault. I feel like if it was just me, everything would be a lot more mature and highbrow, but you're the one who always brings up Akbar, what is it, laying the nuts to winter? What do you call it? I don't know.
Laying pipe?
No, isn't that's something else?
Oh yeah. Well, laying pipe and putting the nuts to mean the same thing.
No, I thought laying pipe was at whatever.
Yeah. No, it's all basically means the same thing.
Okay.
You giving the old Opa Rancisis, if you know what I mean.
Opa Rancisis, one of the most unexpected cameos in this book for me. I knew he was old. I didn't think he was that old. So yeah. Do you want to maybe outline for everyone what High Republic or the High Republic is?
Sure. So the High Republic is basically the newest Star Wars multimedia project. It was first called Project Luminous. That was like its code name. We were all trying to figure out what it was.
I thought it would be like a new version of the Xbox Kinect, because wasn't that something similar originally? What was that code name?
That does sound right. I can't remember exactly what it was called.
But yeah, instead we got Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, instead we got Star Wars stuff, kind of lame, but yeah, it's basically a new era. It takes place between 250 and 150 years, I think, before Episode 1. I forget exactly when this book is set. It might be 250 BBY. Do you know the exact date?
I am looking it up.
It doesn't really matter. It's an era of optimism. It's like the zenith of the Republic and the Jedi Order, and everything is pretty epic. But of course, there's new emerging threats, and this will be kind of like a big multimedia project. So we're in phase one of the High Republic now, with Light of the Jedi, the book that we're discussing today. And there's a young adult book, and there's a comic, and then I think phase one's going to last all the way until 2022 or 2023.
Yeah, and this is it's set 232 BBY for this book,
232,
so 200
okay.
years before about
that. 200 before episode 1.
Yeah, and some of this is actually going to go up as late as like right before the prequels, I think. So I think it's Dark Acolyte that's going to be the one of the later period things. So we might get live action cities or Plagueis in that, maybe. Just maybe.
I would expect.
This is like 40 to 50 years before episode 1.
And that's kind of an interesting point to start our conversation. Is there any news or anything you want to talk about before we dive deep into this? Or
yeah, so there's a pretty big bit of news that came out yesterday that I think both of us are, or not yesterday, 2 days ago now, that I think we're both pretty excited for. And that is that EA is no longer the exclusive publisher of Star Wars games. Lucasfilm Games has expanded into being the active licensor for everything. So they're going to be working with other publishers. We've already got a Ubisoft announcement where Massive is going to be making an open world Star Wars game. We don't really have much information on that beyond that it exists.
It could be shit.
It could be. That is definitely possible. And I'm glad you're here to bring us all back down. No, I
just reminding everybody.
Yeah, no. But it does seem like we are going to get a lot more Star Wars games. And this doesn't mean that EA isn't making Star Wars games anymore. Just that other people are going to be as well. And it seems like EA was already starting to make more themselves. So between like Fallen Order 2 and the next 5 sequels of Squadrons that I hope are coming out, we should probably get, hopefully over the next 2 or 3 years, because it'll take some time for stuff to ramp up. But hopefully we'll start seeing a couple games come out per year, and we'll have a lot of fun Star Wars experiences.
Yes, they can start. I think the contract actually ends in 2023. So at that point, the exclusivity will be gone. So I can make my Avar Chris, Elzar Man romance simulator. And I'm sure Lucasfilm and Disney will be totally for that. And yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's good because I mentioned this in a video that I put out, but it kind of felt like EA when they were only putting out one game every couple of years. Like, they were trying to make games, at least before Squadrons, that like everybody would like. That's why like Star Wars Battlefront 2 was just like a mess of different ideas and not very focused, and I think it suffered because of that. So hopefully now, with probably a lot more games coming out, we'll get some more kind of niche games. We'll get some ones that wouldn't have been made if there were only going to be 1 or 2 games a year. So I'm excited.
And like before, technically any game development company could have gone to EA, because EA was just acting as the publisher. Or EA was exclusively the publisher, but now companies can go to people who aren't EA and see if they want to publish anything. So
yeah, I mean, Lucasfilm at some point too could also start publishing their own if they really wanted to.
Yeah, that's not impossible. They were doing the mobile side already, so
that's true.
If they were to expand that a bit more, then that'd be possible. They still have some of the infrastructure from LucasArts there. They act as the publisher for like the Empire at War patches, one of which just came out today. So
I know that.
Like it's a very bare bones thing.
Like the press release?
No, I don't even know if there was a press release. It was like the thing I linked to you where it was just Ted posting in a page 60 of a message board. That is the
only... Hey boys, we got her out.
Yeah, that's basically the only real announcement that I saw. But but yeah, it's not impossible that we start seeing Disney publish it. And considering it's Disney, it wouldn't surprise me if they started going that direction. But it also seems like that would be an amount of overhead that they don't necessarily want, because setting up all that for...
It's a lot of infrastructure.
Yeah, and then there's more pressure to have however many projects all at once, whereas now, if there's downtime, it just means that they're not contracting out a publisher and a developer instead of having this behemoth that they have to keep active. So
it's also one less mouth to feed, though, in the process of everyone getting paid. So that might be attractive. We'll see, though. It's pretty early to to guess about that, but it's exciting, and things are coming up Star Wars recently with TV shows and the High Republic and this, so
Yeah,
it's been a good few months.
yeah, in my opinion, this is better than the arrangement that used to exist under LucasArts, because
Oh
it used to
yeah.
be just that LucasArts was EA, uh,
Hmm.
or was in the position of EA, and now there's less worry about like if LucasArts was struggling for a while and we lost out on a lot of good Star Wars, or
Hmm.
who knows if they would have been good, but we lost out of a lot of games that I was looking forward to, that in my mind were good, but
Hmm.
now that isn't quite the same concern. So yeah.
No, this is like best case scenario in my opinion.
Hmm.
Because EA was making good games, I think, especially Fallen Order and Squadrons. They get to keep doing what they're doing, so it's like no loss there, unless they decide the. I mean, it is possible that EA is going to can some ideas they have because they see their profits as lower. But hopefully, all the plans they have continue and we get some new ones. So yeah, it's best of both worlds, really.
Hmm. Was there anything else that's been announced over the last few days or that you want to touch on?
Yeah, so before the stream, my dog just threw up right under my desk, and it stinks. It really does stink.
And you're going to be here for the whole podcast, and we're going to be doing some Fall Guys and Beerio Kart after this. So,
Yep. Yeah.
uh, yeah, that's have
It
fun
really
dealing with
just
that.
stinks, and I'm not impressed, Remy. Okay, she knows what she did.
Is she in the office with you?
No, she's out in the rec room.
Okay.
Okay, I wouldn't yell if she were that close. I'd make her feel bad.
So you're just faking it for the podcast.
No, because the door is open. Like I wanted her to hear it, but I didn't want her to like be right next to me and feel like I'm yelling at her. You know what I mean?
You wanted her to feel like you were yelling from afar,
Yeah, exactly.
or give the impression that it's not really about her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So, do we jump into Light of the Jedi directly, or do we open a beer first?
Well, I just made that decision for me. I think that's a personal thing. You got to figure out for yourself.
And I think that brings us to a good point here with Elzar, Elzar Mann, and how he sees the Force. So one of the first things I think that I want to talk about with the book is that, or maybe do you want to give your general impression first?
Yeah. Yeah. General impression. This is a tough one because there were points of this book that I quite liked, and I thought generally the book was compared to something like Aftermath, which was like another book that started off kind of a new era of Star Wars. I thought the book was well written, but I don't know. I liked it. I really liked parts. I really disliked parts. It wasn't bad. I was hoping for more though. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
And like, I think my main problem, and when I think before I started getting really into it, you mentioned that it kind of reminded me of, or kind of reminded you of Darth Bane.
Yeah.
And I understand what you mean by that, in that the book is a lot of tell, don't show when it comes to characters. So like it spends a lot of time telling about how the Jedi, like all the Jedi are flawless. Um, that one family that the Nihil steal are flawless. The Nihil themselves are really grungy, evil aliens. So it was a bit on the nose, I guess, even for Star Wars standards.
So
Um,
I think that's a good topic for us to get into. I kind of like I know what you're saying, and
mhm,
I think part of that was intentional, and that
mhm,
that's going to be something that we get into more as the series goes on. I
mhm.
hope, because I could see it going either way, where it is actually taken at face value, and all these people are that. But I can also see that as being set up for how they're sort of perceiving themselves, and this
Yeah.
leads into the fall. That's obvious that kind of inevitably comes
Yeah.
with that. We even see a bit of that within the book.
Hmm. No, I think you're right about that. It is setting them up to like as these gods because it's gonna tear them down. Um, it's just I guess it's more of an issue with the Nihil than the Jedi for me,
Mhm.
where it's like they're evil to the point, or they're just bad to the point where like there's no like I don't know. There's not a lot of logic, I guess, in there for me, or a lot of reasoning. I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't mind like the general optimism because like it is a very optimistic book. It's the whole idea is that the Republic is in its glory years. There's this saying where all the Republic basically all for one and one for all. Um, and that is kind of nice, especially because we do know everything is going to go to shit eventually.
yeah, like my general impression was that it's like, especially in the first half, it felt very just action heavy, kind of
Hmm.
shallow, like Bane. And I do think that it's definitely more shallow than some of what we've seen in some other places. Like just staying within canon, Alphabet Squadron, I think, is
Mm,
kind of the gold standard for that right now, almost.
mhm,
Or even something like Star Wars Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising,
mhm.
uh, where like yeah, it's very these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. I hope to see that a bit more deconstructed as we go on, but there is still the idea that like yes, it's supposed to be this is the height of everything, everyone's doing pretty well, uh, but I do hope that gets examined a bit more, uh, without really undercutting the general idea of like no, this is actually not a terrible time for them to be alive.
Mhm.
But the first half of the book, there were parts where I was like in and out of it. But I feel like the second half of the book, I got a lot more into it. Uh,
It's interesting. I was the opposite. I enjoyed the disaster bit of the beginning, and then I think I was less interested afterwards. And I feel like the book could have slowed down a little bit,
yeah,
maybe. Like it would have been nice to see more of what the Republic's like because it is this new era, and we don't spend time away from Jedi. Well, there's that one guy, the technician, but we don't really get a whole lot from his angle. I'm just thinking of like how Fate of the Jedi did it, where there is lots of time spent like among the regular populace, even though there is this much larger story with the Jedi going on.
hmm
I would have liked something like that, and I would have liked, there to be more of a Coruscant character rather than just Chancellor So, who was interesting, but
yeah,
and I mean I'm sure that's all going to come. And this just stood as the introduction. But I thought the disaster was a really interesting way to start the book. And I liked that it wasn't, two chapters and done. It was like they really kind of, I think, give it the time it deserved, considering it's going to be this big thing.
yeah. Well, I think part of what hurt the first half for me is one of the issues I found with the book, just there being too many characters. And I know
Hmm.
that we're going to
Oh
get to
yeah.
know a lot of these people over the course of more books. But
Hmm.
I wouldn't have minded having it be maybe two books introducing half of them almost doing different stuff. Because it was a lot of names to get to know. So I
Yeah.
just started forgetting who was doing what.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's some that I know right now, but there are also some that I couldn't tell you their name. And then some of them
Hmm.
even died after that point. Like Bell and Loden, I kind of had down off
Yeah. Same with
from the
me.
start. I kind of figured out the admiral whose name I've now forgotten,
Hmm.
and Chris's names I had them figured
Agar
out.
Chris. Yeah.
But the Jedi Council member, who was we're gonna immediately get into spoilers here, so I
Hmm.
don't think we've really spoiled anything so far. But I'm about to
No, not
spoil
really.
something, so leave if you haven't watched or read the book yet and are concerned about spoilers. But the Jedi Council member who dies in the last bit of the battle,
Hmm.
uh, she was pretty much there the whole time, and I just kept getting her confused with Chris for a while.
Yeah, I can't even remember
Uh,
which one that is right now as
yeah,
I'm
it
thinking
wasn't
of
until
it.
the council meeting that I finally figured out kind of who she was and what she was kind of about. Because there wasn't enough
Hmm.
time with any of them to really establish
Hmm.
much of their personalities beyond Bell and Loden for a good part of the book.
Right.
And so like when I
Like
started
there's that
reading,
Ithorian Jedi. I don't remember which one that was. And
yeah,
there's like there is Taomi. I think is it Taomi that's the one that dies? I can't remember.
no, it's like uh
Yeah, like this is the problem. There's way too many. And I tweeted about this too because I was like, I'm not sure if it's just like me getting older, but like when I read a book like this, especially with Star Wars names, it's just like they go in and out of my head. Like I could kind of remember Bell Zettifar because it's an interesting name, and like Loden Greatstorm because it's Greatstorm, but like I like I have room for them, Porter Engle, who's like the old Jedi,
Mhm.
Avar Kriss, and Elzar Mann. Those are the 5 characters that kind of stuck with me, and Buryaga because he's a Wookiee. Like those are the 5 or 6 characters that really stuck with me, and then the others are kind of just they weren't. I didn't find that they stuck with me. Like I think you can't half-ass something like that. Like you can't half-ass character introductions. You got to go full ass, and I think they probably should have just stuck with Bell and loaded a bit more, and maybe Avar a bit more, and then
Yeah.
maybe one other Jedi instead of like all the ones that go with.
Like they clearly have a conception of who these characters are meant to be, but it's hard to get that all across when you're introducing 30 plus characters in the space of one book, and it's a relatively short book too.
Hmm.
There's a lot of chapters, but they are. I think my ebook claimed to be 365 pages, but the chapter's relatively short. So every 2 or 3
Yeah.
pages, you're getting like a bit of that's cut off for the actual chapter transitions.
Hmm.
So it's functionally a lot shorter than that. And
Yeah, it was a 13-hour long audiobook, which is not on the long side, probably on the short side of
yeah,
what we read.
and like this is something that we spoke about a bit with Wraith Squadron and Rogue Squadron initially as well, is that it was hard for us to kind of get to know all those characters in the space
Mm,
of of like Wraith Squadron, Rogue Squadron, the initial books of their like generally trilogies, but
mm.
uh and that's with all of them being in the same place interacting the entire time. So
Yeah.
there was more opportunities to get to know them. But for this, it felt like there were character storylines that didn't really have as much impact on what was specifically going on here. It was nice to see them all kind of working together with the disaster,
Hmm.
but having them all trying to be main characters that early on, it was a bit difficult. And I ended up thinking about like, should I make notes for this or not? And I feel
Yeah,
like to
me
give
too.
an accurate representation of how I feel about the book, it kind of works better to not know the names while I'm talking about it, because I did really enjoy the book by the end, but this is something that kind of stuck with me the entire time. And if I'm going to give a good impression of how I felt while reading the book, I think that kind of has to stay around.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's. I think you're right. For me, like I liked the premise, and the Nile were an interesting enough faction, I guess, but I felt like the premise of a hyperspace disaster got a little less interesting as the book went on. So kind of to summarize things, the Nihil, who are like they described them as space Vikings before the book came out. And I think more like space biker gang would probably be like a better like emo space bikers, basically. Um, they use this alternate form of it's sort of like really advanced hyperspace more than like an alternate form of hyperspace based on what I could understand. And it allows them to pull off these really insane jumps. They can micro jump, they can jump from inside gravity wells, they can do all this crazy shit that you can't do with a regular hyperdrive. It's called a path engine, and they
So
get these.
yeah, it feels like this is basically where modern hyperspace technology is going to come from.
I'm not sure because they do a lot of things you can't do with modern hyperspace technology.
It seems a bit more like slightly more advanced, but the stuff
Mm.
that they talk about being like impossible that they end up doing, it seems like they just have better hyperdrives, more or
Yeah, like
less.
it's a bit unclear to me because it does seem like basically I forgot her name, but there's a woman who
Mari
Martian Rowe,
Santeca,
who's sorry,
Mari Santeca.
yeah, Mari Santeca, who I assume is related to Laura Santeca, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
it seems like
Um,
this is how they end up becoming the kind of Jedi devotees that Larson Tekka
yes,
is.
so it seems like maybe her use of the paths and the path engine is basically just because she can calculate these crazy routes in her head because she's like something happened to her. I think it's in the unknown regions, and then afterwards she becomes like a hyperspace savant, basically.
Well, do you think it's like the Skywalkers? Because it seems like
It
it
could
might be some
be.
sort of like force
But the
thing that's
Skywalkers were more like they were using the Force to control the ship in space. I kind of got the idea more that she was working like a supercomputer. Um,
Yeah, like, I think it's presented more like that, but I think it seems like if you were to get like the mechanism behind it, it's a bit more like the Skywalkers, and I think that's why
mhm.
Martian Rowe wanted Loden, because he kind of knows that
Oh,
Mari is
interesting.
going to be like probably wants
Dying
Loden for
soon.
something related to that, or hopes that he can kind of
Mm,
replicate some of what Mari's able to do, because like she's over 100 by this point
hmm.
and kind of kept alive within a medical pod,
Yeah.
because he's Martian Rowe is lying to this woman and saying, "Oh, you were finding all these new hyperspace routes." So
Hmm.
it kind of does imply that like these are things that could be accessed by other people if they just have the right coordinates and
Yeah.
stuff.
I do think that the path engine they have on their ships probably allows some of like because it kind of seems like they're making really advanced kind of like turns and stuff in
Yeah,
hyperspace. Um, so it does seem like the engine facilitates that, but otherwise it's just like her really because they're called paths and she can kind of generate them and they work just like hyperspace routes, but she can make them anywhere pretty much, or she can
well,
discover
she's
them
finding them.
anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, so yeah, it does seem to just be a part of. But then there's also so the Nihil have this base, and I think they call it is it uh non-space or something like
no
that.
space something.
I couldn't figure out if that was supposed to be like another dimension or something. It almost seemed like that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be like, because we've got stuff with other dimensions with Mortis and World Between Worlds, and
Hmm.
so it wouldn't it and hyperspace is essentially another dimension,
Yeah,
hyperspace and real space. So with how the paths do stuff, it wouldn't surprise me if it's kind of like entering
yeah.
in another like hyperspace adjacent dimension.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So it turns out by the end of the book that this disaster was essentially caused by a Nihil ship using its path engine colliding, or it doesn't actually collide with the Republic ship. The Republic ship is forced to pull this maneuver and it breaks apart. These pieces go across the galaxy, which I don't know. To me, that's like that kind of has the Last Jedi issue where like if you could willingly do that to your ship, it's like why does it not happen more often, you know?
Yeah, and I think that might be the distinction with path engines versus just more advanced hyperspaces, that you can
Mhm.
kind of just drive directly within
Yeah.
it. Uh,
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm just not sure how much of an area those pieces kept going through hyperspace, because I don't know if it's just kind of like the
Mhm.
straight down whatever trade spine goes out to Ariadu, and it was all kind of localized
Yeah.
in the southern part of the galaxy, but it's like Lena So talks about cutting off the entire outer rim, though there are fewer hyperspace routes to get out that far, so
Mhm.
that's part of why. But we do get a few planets that start dealing with the fallout from this. There's Herzl,
Mhm.
Ariadu, and a few others,
The Antuine gets knocked by one.
which is on the opposite side of the galaxy.
Yeah, that was like another one of my problems too, and this is kind of a minor one. Like I'm not usually too I don't hold Star Wars to any scientific standard, but I did have a problem where space is really big, and I feel like even if all these particles are coming or these projectiles are coming out down hyperspace routes, even if they are naturally near planets, it felt like every single one was hitting something like a space station. I don't know. Space
Yeah.
is just really big, so I was like a little bit suspension of disbelief there. And they're also I posted about this on Twitter, and a lot of people disagreed with me, but they're also moving at the speed of light, like or near the speed of light. They say they're moving at a high percentage of the speed of light, and they're like shooting the projectiles down with missiles and stuff. And for me, that was like it just didn't feel right, like something that Star Wars ships could do. Um,
Well,
but
it
whatever.
depends on which direction they were coming from, because like I think they were typically firing out away from the planet,
Hmm.
and then they started chasing the one or two down. But
Hmm.
I think they were typically being shot at from the opposite direction. So they were
Yeah.
the parts of the ship were heading towards people that were then being
Hmm.
shot, not going from behind.
Yeah.
So I think like I was pretty much fine with the whole thing until it was revealed that this was done intentionally. Because
Hmm.
if I'm generally fine with like whatever happens as an accident or whatever, uh, and then you deal with that because the Force. And
Hmm.
this is something that was happening, and the Force made this happen, and then how they deal with it, that's the problem.
Hmm.
Or like how the characters deal with it becomes the problem for them to overcome, not that is a problem with the story. But
Hmm.
when we start hearing about like, oh, this is something that Martian did on purpose, then it's a bit too much like he was in, because like he was clearly doing this intending for these to hit all these planets.
Hmm.
And I don't know, that's the biggest pool trick shot I've ever seen, and that's where I started having some more questions
Yeah.
with it.
And it just turns out too that it's really just the ship trying to dodge the projectile, which is what causes this massive accident like across the galaxy. And it's just like that's something that could happen again, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Or like that's something you think would happen other times. Like I would have preferred if there was, because at the beginning they make it seem like there's some sort of sickness with hyperspace. I think that would have been a better explanation for why the ship breaks apart and why it's able to maintain kind of its position in hyperspace until it randomly pops out. Like I would have preferred that, I think, rather than oh the
And
ship
then
dodged
stuff
and
is
it's
coming
just
out
kind of
randomly, and
yeah.
yeah. But a
Yeah.
lot of that, it just like that's Star Wars.
Yeah, no, it is. It's just I guess I expected the event to be like a big thing that was really crucial to the entire High Republic series. Like I thought it was
Yeah.
going to be like something that the Nihil used, or like something the Galaxy was doing, or like
Hmm.
maybe the Sith were doing. But I don't think it's going to be a major element of future books unless there's more emergencies or cataclysms or whatever.
Yeah, like I was kind of under that same impression where it seemed more like the direction it was going was that this happens, and then there's all these other groups like the Nihil, or specifically the Nihil, that take advantage of it and causes these divisions in the Republic. But
Mm-hmm.
instead, within the space of the one book, we find out that it was done intentionally by the Nihil, and the Republic also finds that out, and then a third of the Nihil get taken out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's so. What do you think's the deal with them anyway? Or because the Nihil are led by Martian Rowe, who's he's called the Eye of the Nihil. He's not actually like the leader per se. The
Yeah.
Nihil have like three.
The rule of three. I really wish
Yeah,
that sentence hadn't been there.
me too.
There's so
Like
that's one of the other things that. Sorry, I don't want to
it's
cut
okay.
off that, but one of the other. It kind of gets back to what we were talking about initially. But one of the things that I think was one of the weaker parts of the book is that there are kind of a lot of cliches in it.
Hmm.
Where I feel like the rule of three is an obvious reference to the rule of two. Just didn't
Hmm.
need to be there because the Nihil aren't setting themselves up after the Sith. They're
Yeah.
just got thrown in as a Star Warsy term, I guess. And the "We Are the Republic," and that kind of gets explained later as a thing that was intentionally done to kind of uh, like slogans are a powerful thing. So
Hmm.
even if it feels kind of cheesy, I think that gets acknowledged enough within the book that it's not that didn't become a problem for me. But then there's also like 73 instances of people quoting Yoda as luminous beings or we,
Yeah.
which just
Yeah.
if it if, I liked I prefer when that kind of thing is the kind of thing that a character says in the moment because of the context of their situation. But now if we go back and have like that thing that Yoda says become, oh, that's just a weird Jedi proverb he's been saying at every opportunity since he was a sprightly 600-year
Hmm.
old little gremlin, then it kind of, I don't know, that kind of cheapens it a bit for me, which
No, I agree.
didn't detract that much from my overall enjoyment, but it was something that did come up a few times that ended up
Hmm.
being kind of sticking points for me. But yeah, sorry. Martian Row,
No,
go
you're
ahead.
right. I agree. It's just like Star Wars authors need to show a bit more restraint sometimes
Yeah, and it's the same
because
thing
like
that we talked about in some of the earlier books, where it's like
mhm,
it felt like there were too many instances of the like X-wing series kind of relying on these character catchphrases or throwing in
mhm.
references that didn't necessarily need to be there. They could rely on their own strengths rather than feeling the need to be like, "Hey, look, I'm a Star Wars reference every few minutes." But
Hmm. Yeah, it's like we know this is a Star Wars book. We're not going to forget if we don't have the Yoda reference in there. Um, but yeah, so the Nihil have these three sects, basically, each run by a leader. They kind of work together, and then, but independently as well. They all share their plunder and whatnot. And then there's also the Eye, who provides these paths, which gives the Nihil a big advantage because they can show up in atmosphere, basically wherever they want, using these special hyperspace lanes. And he also has an element of leadership in the Nihil early on, where they vote on whether they do these big projects or these raids or whatever else, and often the Eye will be the tie-breaking vote. But by the end of the book, Marchion Ro has basically assumed control over the entire organization, which I think is an interesting way to take it.
Yeah, like I feel like parts of this could have been again spread over a bit of a longer period of time, because we kind of, the way the Nihil were advertised were kind of like, these are the people who like the High Republic is the group that's like, oh, we're working for the collective good and everyone's able to prosper under this, and then the Nihil are the ones that are just into just their positive freedom, so they're free to do whatever they want. They don't want to have these other restrictions, so they're out kind of pillaging, taking what they want, and they want to get rid of this ordered society, basically. And within like 5 minutes, like almost, actually I think it was their initial introduction, the first scene with Martian Row and them, where it's like, they thought this, but actually they are subsumed by a obviously more strict hierarchy and less free thing under me. So I think it could have been more interesting if it was like seeing a bit more of them acting in that way they were presented initially, before we find out actually no, they're getting taken advantage of by how Martian's doing this. But instead we kind of just get right to that point.
Yeah, there was the interesting moment where I did like when he kind of has his badass moment and shuts the other what are they called again?
The
Tempest
leader?
Runners.
Yeah,
He shuts the Tempest Runners down. That was interesting, but yeah, it would have been nice to be a bit more nuanced. Like, I don't know, Marchion Ro goes between being kind of interesting to being like cringe eye rolly for me. Like, I think that's true with the Nihil generally. Like, they're just so edgy the way they're written. Like, listening to heavy metal music and like the shit they say, like their chants and stuff, and it's like it works sometimes, but other times I'm like, even for Star Wars, this is kind of lame.
Yeah, they're very Nagai.
Yes, they are very Nagai. That's a very good comparison.
But I don't. Yeah, like there were parts where I really did like Martian, but the fact that we don't know what he's actually doing, like we get this full explanation of how the Nihil is a lie, basically, and how it's been taken advantage of, but we have no real indication of what his plan is at all, other than he just wants to take over the Nihil. And I don't think we need everything explained to us yet, but it would have been nice to have some kind of idea of what he's doing, and how this all connects.
Yeah, like I was reading the last few pages, and I was like, okay, where's this hook gonna be? Like, where's the thing that's gonna make me want to read the next book? And I didn't really get it. Like, I like the universe they set up. We do get, I guess, we do have that one moment where what's his name has the vision. Elzar has the vision of the future, and it's just, oh, bad things are happening. But I don't know. Like, I'm gonna guess that there's some sort of Sith thing going on with the Nihil. I do think it will probably come back to the Sith trying to destabilize the Republic, but I'm not surprised they didn't reveal that. But I wish they gave us a little bit more, because I finished reading the book and I was just like, okay, like, so what's next? I guess
We did get a kind of like implicit canonization of like the Tor Sith Wars. So that was interesting there. But yeah, like the Sith are definitely in the background somewhere, but maybe they will connect to the Nihil.
Do you think they're involved at all, or will be involved in this? Because I assume at some point, like in the 3 arcs, they'll
like I feel like
learn what they're up to.
Plagueis has got to come up at least somewhere in High Republic, and maybe his master as well. But I don't know if they're going to be involved directly with the Nihil, or if we're kind of going to move past the point where like we're going to get the broader picture, and the Nihil are part of that, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
Martian Row is part of something else. But I don't know.
It could
There's
also
just
just
so little explanation of what his actual goal
yeah.
is, or what his relationship to everything else is. We get a little hint that like
Mm-hmm.
him and his dad, who I think his name was spelled two different ways throughout the book.
Oh
So it was
really?
like Agar and then Asgar or
Yeah, they
something.
call it Asgard in the audiobook.
Because I think there were a few points where he was just Agar, so I
Mm.
wasn't sure. That might just be me misremembering it, but yeah, like seeing how he connects to anything is obviously like that. I don't need his ambitions revealed right now, but when the Nihil didn't have any ambitions of their own, we're not really seeing things come together. Like there wasn't much to frame what they were doing because the Nihil were generally happy to just kind of raid and plunder, but we didn't really
Mm-hmm.
see them doing much of that in this book. So their
Mm-hmm.
motivations are unclear, or their motivations are clearly not what are being acted
Mm-hmm.
on throughout this book because they're just essentially doing the things that Martian puppets them to do. But because
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what his motivation is either, it'd be one thing if we were kind of seeing them act under his orders, doing the things they think they want to accomplish, and then we get the broader picture revealed later, uh, then great. But as it is, it's like their motivations don't matter, and then Martians aren't explained at all. So
Yeah.
they're kind of doing all this without context, and it's a bit difficult to care about them when I spent the whole book thinking like, oh, so they're just leading to something else, but then the something else never really came yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at this point too if this whole arc ended up being just that, like one arc of the High Republic era. Um and then maybe there will be other, like maybe it will be a self-contained story just to set up the like the this time in history, and then we'll get something else afterwards. Yeah, like
Yeah.
this could be a self-contained just opening chapter to the story.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
like Martian is definitely going to continue to grow as a villain because like he has a lightsaber now, which makes him pretty powerful. So
Yeah, he's super epic now actually.
yeah, he has a mask. That's always a sign of a Star Wars villain.
Mhm. Oh my god, could Martian Rowe be Darth Vader?
I think that's a good theory. I
Yeah.
think he might be Darth Vader's father.
That's a very good theory. I'm gonna mark that one down.
All right, are we putting that down as our bet?
I think we were both agreed though, so let's just accept that we probably know what's going on and continue.
Okay, so well, I figured it'd be our bet against the world. The
Okay,
world owes
yeah,
us
no,
money if we're
I'm
not.
down.
Okay,
You're my ride or die, so yeah, I'm down
all
for
right,
that.
cool. So Darth Vader, Martian Rose. Got it.
And not Anakin, just Darth Vader.
Yeah. No, they're two different characters.
I'll name
It's
him Darth Vader.
so I think what actually happens is like Martian Rowe and Lorna D have a
Mhm.
child who's like Voldemort's child and the cursed child of
Mhm.
Harry Potter. I know we make a lot of Harry Potter references here. I don't think any of you ever expected us to get into cursed child territory. I don't think you've even read it,
No, I've never read
Justin.
it.
Don't. But
I won't. I
but
won't.
they have a child who's just a disembodied spirit that kind of uh,
I assume it's
possesses
from what's her
Anakin.
name? Bellatrix, is it?
Uh, Voldemort's
Bellatrix's
child.
daughter?
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah. It's
so Voldemort got he got it done, did he? Or did he do it in the spirit from the spirit realm after he died?
I think it was before he died. I think it was probably like right before the Battle of Hogwarts.
So it's a little Jason Sandula situation.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Can you imagine? Lay in the nuts. That's what I usually say. Can you imagine Voldemort just angrily laying the nuts, knowing he's about to kill Harry Potter, just pumped out of his fucking mind?
He just goes up to Bellatrix. You know, we could both die tomorrow.
I don't think he ever thought he was gonna die. He's like, you might die tomorrow. I can't be killed. I don't have a nose.
Is that how that works?
I think so.
Michael Jackson died.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. we'll have to talk to Charlie about that later. He's the big MJ fan.
Does that extend beyond the Ayuwaki or?
Yeah, it does. Like he's like I can tell sometimes that he's way more into Michael Jackson than he lets up. Like, let's get him drunk tonight and ask when he's falling
Okay,
asleep.
that sounds fair.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so what
So the book did do some things that I thought were really good. Like I feel like we're shitting on it a lot, and
no,
that's because I didn't love the book.
I'm more positive than negative on the book.
Hmm.
We'll get to our tier ratings later, but like my point of comparison was basically Darth Bane the whole time, and I think
Hmm.
I don't know if I liked it as much as the first Darth Bane book, but I think I liked it more than the other two.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've rated things. I'm gonna take a look at the list.
This is the first like novel we have done in
Ages
4, maybe 5 months.
since Darth Bane 3, right?
No,
Probably.
no, that was the Darth Bane books were a while ago. The last one we did
I mean, besides for Young Jedi, I'm
Belsavis.
not counting Young
No,
Jedi Knight.
the Belsavis book,
Belsavis book.
the book on Belsavis with the with Callista, the first of the Callista
Oh
trilogy.
yeah, yeah. Children of the Jedi.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Forgot that was there.
we're just doing all the of the Jedi books right now.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Like, there were parts in this book that I really liked. I thought it did a good job of like raising tensions at some part. Like, I was really hoping that Bell and Loden would catch the Nihil when they were stealing that family. I thought they did a good job there. I thought it was a little transparent at the beginning when, like, I knew when they started spending time with random civilians that those people were going to die. Like that freighter captain at the beginning who, like, the book goes out of its way to like give a backstory to. I was like, okay, she's dead. And I knew that because that chapter actually released a while ago. Um, and it does that later with somebody else as well. Oh yeah, those people on the monitoring station.
Yeah, the first
I was
two
like, okay.
chapters were
He's like,
just that.
I thought that was like maybe also a bit heavy handed, but I enjoyed it, and it's cheap, but it does work, I think. I also thought the moment where the Jedi are coming together was well done. Where Avar Chris is using her, she's got kind of a unique force power. It's sort of like a battle meditation, but it's more like she's strengthening the bonds between Jedi and helping everyone to communicate. And
Yeah, it was more like the mind meld from NJO.
yeah, it was like a mind melt,
She's kind of got the
just with
Jason
like,
Solo empath powers going on.
yeah,
So keep an eye
exactly.
on Avar Chris to turn Sith by the end.
Yeah, Avar Sith. I like it. Um, Speaking of, she's definitely her and Elzar definitely were banging in the past,
Oh yeah, they
and
make that explicitly clear.
they're like, it's okay if you bang while you're Padawans, and I was like, nice.
Well, it's frowned upon,
Well,
but everyone looks the other way. Much like their like this is clearly prime Yoda Yaddle making Grogu time, right?
mm-hmm, for
So
sure. But I think I would like if this one thing that I would like is if these books examine like all these bullshit Jedi rules, like don't have anyone that you love
attachments.
in your life, and like they decide that yeah, those are kind of shit, and if you want to do that, that's fine.
Hmm.
um yeah, I always thought it was really stupid that like one of the main teachings were, because Star Wars is, George Lucas ultimately envisioned Star Wars as a guide for young people to, be good people and, leave the house and all that. I never liked the idea that like to be a Jedi, you've got to essentially be an unrealistic person. You've got to not feel attachment. You've got to, be completely selfless. So I would like if this book series examined how you can be a Jedi without following all of these kind of bullshit rules. Like I don't think there's any reason why Jedi shouldn't be able to fall in love. Like I think the lesson, or even take a partner, I think the lesson should be like, yes, you can do that, but you have to have a healthy attachment. Like the issue with
Hmm.
Anakin was not that he was attached to Padme, it was that he had an unhealthy attachment to her because he feared losing her so much. And I think
Yeah.
it would be good if we saw some of that examined, but I'm not sure if we will or not.
Well, and if we see kind of how the Fall of the Jedi comes into that, and that's even what the period is kind of called after
Hmm.
this, But like seeing how this leads up to the kind of corrupted or the kind of disconnected Jedi Order, where like the inability to or the prevention of forming attachments contributed heavily to the thing that got them all killed, and kind of
Mhm.
seeing how we led up to that would be nice.
Mhm.
Seeing the downside of this, because like, if it ends up just being the High Republic in the height of the Jedi was just exactly the things that we know led to them all kind
Yeah.
of dying, and a lot of the people who were in charge still being in charge 300 years later or 200 years later,
Mhm.
because there's at least 3 Jedi Council members from Episode 1 that are in place already.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I would be a little disappointed there.
I
I
assume at some point we're going to see Chancellor So assassinated.
Yeah, or like is that or even just defeated in an election by that Outer Rim senator,
Yeah.
because there's more Outer Rim planets now. Maybe they'd be able to vote against her, like claim she's just a core, one of those core elites.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, just since we were kind of mentioning Yoda, uh, and the thing I was saying earlier about like the cliches, where like Yoda is followed everywhere in this book when he gets mentioned. Like they
Mhm.
always talk about how he has this little posse of younglings that he's training, just because of the scene
Yeah.
with the map. That's the only reason that's there, and it's
Yeah, like they could have had Yoda out, like he's on sabbatical too, so they could have had him out like learning the mysteries of the Force or some shit.
yeah.
Like I'm not necessarily convinced that he would have had to. And yeah, this book does suffer from that. Like that's a good point, and it's kind of disappointing because they gave themselves enough room to really make their own thing. But I mean, they're not being weighed down too far yet. But I am a bit worried that they could get a little too caught up in trying to hit all the Star Wars notes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but like it's more with that like we have an opportunity to kind of see Yoda and how he turned into the Yoda we got.
Hmm.
And if the only Yoda we get is kind of like, oh look, he was with younglings before. Here's Yoda with the younglings now,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, or like uh, the quotes about do or do not, or
Hmm.
the luminous beings are we quote. Then I I feel like that's a missed opportunity if that ends
Hmm.
up being what we get. We didn't really get much Yoda right now, so that's fine.
He's
But
AFK
the
right
more
now.
he shows up, hopefully we don't get quite as much of that.
Yeah. Yeah, Yoda's AFK. He's off doing his own thing. But I'm
Well, training the
sure
younglings while
I'm
he's on
sure young
sabbatical.
sexy Yoda will show up at some point.
Yeah, because there's the comics about that, or is that the young adult book or the comic?
I'm not sure.
But yeah, so that's what that's kind of my thoughts on. Well, actually, the most prominently featured uh, Jedi Master we get here is actually Yariel Poof. So
Yeah. It was kind of funny. He was a I guess I didn't realize he was so old. I mean, his
yeah.
neck do be long, but I didn't realize that meant that he was so old.
Well, you're a well established Poof pal, the leader of the Yariel Poof fan club. So what was your how excited were you to get him so prominently featured in the novel?
I actually love Yariel Poof because I had a one of the old visual guides for the prequels had a big picture of him, and I think it said he had like I forget whether he had a second heart in his head or something, some weird physiological fact about him that I used to love when I was a kid, and yeah, it was like it just point all that out about him. I thought it was really cool, but it doesn't really do too much. So there was one cool scene with the Jedi Council that I enjoyed. Wish we would have got more of that. I like the Starlight Beacon's pretty cool too. So it'll be interesting to see because that's where because at the end of the book we learn that's where Avar is going, and she seems to be one of the main characters in the books. Um, so presumably we'll see a lot about how the Starlight Beacon operates. I'm kind of wondering whether it's still around or whether it gets destroyed at some point. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think we know for sure.
Yeah, because I feel like that'll kind of be the symbol of the fall of the Republic
Mm-hmm.
is Starlight Beacon going down, but or
Or
not the fall,
it
but like
starts just
the end of the High
broadcasting
Republic.
TLC like My 600 Pound Life or something and nothing else.
It's the Star Wars History Channel.
It's just 9 Day Fiance nonstop.
There's an episode of Pawn, like the later books are just Pawn Stars on Starlight Beacon. I
Yeah, that would
found
actually be
this
sick.
600-year-old lightsaber. Do you think this is worth much? I was hoping to get about 100,000 credits for it. Well, I got a friend who's an expert in lightsabers. Let me call my buddy real quick.
Yeah,
I'll
no, that would be sick.
give you $5 for it.
That kind of reminds me. What did you think of the? So we get some new technology in this book, which I kind of liked it. What did you think of the tech and um, the battles we got?
So the biggest thing that I liked on that side, as far as like the tech or military organizational side, is that we kind of see how the Republic military operated when there wasn't a standing Republic military. We kind of get a lot
Hmm.
of this by implication in other places, but here we kind of see it in action and explicitly stated in a way that we didn't really get many places
Hmm.
before, either in canon or in Legends. And you can kind of assume that the way the Republic military functioned in Legends would have been about the same, where there's this kind of token defense force made out of these kind of smaller ships, and
Yeah.
they were more of the kind of patrol kind of forces. Maybe they get deployed in certain areas, but you also have in the background all these sector forces. So even
Hmm.
if there's no standing Republic military, there's all of these other planetary forces. There's the Corellian Defense Force. There's Ariadu, we get explicitly in here. And Lena So mentions these warlord forces that are out there.
Hmm.
So even though it is technically within the period of peace and there's no standing military, and the Jedi aren't taking a military role, there are still well-armed systems out there.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the Jedi can kind of, or the Republic. For one, it actually seems like the Jedi have a larger military than the Republic, but
mhm.
the Republic itself can kind of conscript sector forces
Yeah,
into fleets that will be then commanded by Republic military officers, which is some world building and some details that I quite like because it's really the way that makes most sense if you're going to demilitarize.
yeah. So the demilitarization in this context is more decentralizing the military,
Decentralization, yeah.
and
And
then
then so which it's kind of like what the New Republic does in canon as well.
yeah,
Um, just the New Republic in canon doesn't go quite as far because they don't have as much time. But
and uh, the New Republic or Galactic Alliance in Legends kind of does the same thing as well, where they end up going further towards the sector defense forces, and one of the reasons Corellia rebels is because they want more freedom to make those defense forces.
mhm, yeah, it's which is nice. Some nice Legacy of the Force stuff in there. But what did you think of the battle? I guess because there's one big space battle, and it was like they're kind of hyping it up because they massed this giant. Well, they kind of describe it as like this big Republic war fleet, and it's like 5 ships. And I was like, ah,
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't enjoy, or that battle wasn't one of my favorite parts in the book. I don't
no.
think it's like the only thing I can remember happening that was actually described as part of the battle was the
Really?
freighter dumping the goop out and then igniting it,
Yeah,
which okay.
yeah, that was interesting. It was kind of lame because like the Republic was clearly winning. Basically, the Nihil have freighters and small ships, and the Republic has like 6 big warships and then a Jedi ship. Um, and the Republic's cleanly like winning very well, and then the leader of the Nihil is just like, just fight dirty, lads, and they get it done.
Yeah. Like I do like what it meant for the overall story, where like
Hmm.
I enjoyed how Martian was willing uh to use them like that, and basically gave this speech, had those recordings of himself doing that, and then was like, oh look, they must have really taken that to heart, when really he told them all. Like he forced the ships to
Hmm.
mini jump or micro jump into the Republic forces, so he's able to take out a lot of the Republic forces, but also able to take out a
Yeah,
faction of the Nihil that weren't going to be especially useful
yeah,
to him, and make the Republic think that they were not a threat anymore. Like I thought that was a good way to handle uh, those elements of those problems that the Nihil were going to have, so they could build up more in the background.
hmm,
Even though I don't think it was one of the better Star Wars like as far as the battle itself goes, it wasn't one of my favorites.
no, yeah, it wasn't super exciting. I didn't think it was particularly well written either.
Mhm. I was very confused about the specifics of what was going on in certain places.
Yeah,
Where I even got to the point where I was just like skipping down the page a bit to kind of get back to the rest of the story because it was
yeah.
very kind of hectic and
hmm I mean, that's a lot of the book too. It's just kind of hectic. Like I'm thinking kind of about how I would have written it, and not that I'm an author or I could write a Star Wars book, but I think I would have liked to follow the relationship between like Avar Chris and Elzar Mann. I think it would have been interesting maybe if we had some flashback chapters maybe to them as Padawans, and the book was kind of about their relationship, and maybe the relationship as well between Loden and Bell. I think that's how I would have structured it, because I think that would have helped make these individual Jedi more likable. Like I already did start to like the relationship between the master and apprentice and the two companion Jedi, but it would have been nice if they focused a bit more on that.
mhm.
And we also would have got to see more of the universe and more of the kind of galaxy at this point. We would have got to see more of the Jedi Order. We would have had more kind of slower moments, because
Yeah.
a lot of the book is fully full of action. And we would have, I think, most importantly, removed some of the. There were just too many characters, especially when you have. Not only do you have to know Marchion Ro, you also have to know the three Nihil commanders. I can't remember their name. Like I know generally there's one who's, very sneaky and stealthy. There's one who's all drugged up, and then there's
Yeah.
another one.
There was Lorna
Um,
D, there was Pad Thai, and there was Kavik.
Pad Thai was the Chevin, wasn't he? Was he a Chevin? No.
One of them was a Chevin or Chev. I can never remember which is the humanoid, which is the elephant, but it was the elephant
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And if Tracina Lobby got mixed up on that, then I can't be held accountable for my actions. Uh, I think Lorna D was a Twi'lek. Like they
Yeah,
did
she
put a lot
was.
of time into like saying, "Oh, look at these other species we have. And everyone's not just a human," which I like when we get more alien characters, rather than just like one or two. But because there were so many characters, I can't remember who was what anymore. Anyways,
Mhm. What did you think of the what was his name? The Gungan gangster.
Wet Bub.
Yeah, Wet Bub. I
Yeah,
thought he was funny.
it's nice to see Gungans out in the galaxy.
Yeah. It's like they can leave Naboo, and
Yeah,
they don't have
I
to
was pro
be,
Wet Bub.
yeah, pro Wet Bub. Gross.
I feel like we need to work that into a new a new saying somewhere. That'll be
Yeah,
the iTunes review call.
yeah,
Make
if
sure
you
to
can work
get
Wet
Wet
Bub,
Bub into your
the
review.
the two words don't need to be next to each other, but just the
No,
word wet and then the word bub somewhere.
capitalize them
Um,
so we know
yeah,
you didn't just happen to say Wet and Bub in your review otherwise.
yeah,
Because it
make
could
it
happen.
work.
You never know.
Yeah, make it work. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts? I mean, I feel like I'm shitting on the book. I enjoyed parts of it. I never felt like it was a slog like I did
No.
with like Children of the Jedi, or like some of the other books that I've liked a lot less than this one. But I was also I was captivated in the chase when those miners got stolen. I thought that was really interesting. There were a few other moments that captured my attention, but the book as a whole, I wouldn't say had me like really excited to read more, but it wasn't awful. I
Yeah.
was just hoping for more from a entry into this new era.
Yeah. Like, I feel like parts of the things that I didn't love may be the kind of things that are a result of it being the intro where they wanted to have this action packed thing, introduce all the characters, when those are the two things where I feel like they could have taken it a bit slower and had a
Yeah.
stronger individual book. They
Yeah.
might have been thinking a bit more in terms of how it's going to fit into everything else. And in my opinion, stumbled on that point a little bit. Uh,
Totally.
but
Like
I guess, do you want to get into the ranking it then?
yeah, I'll just say I think it would have been to their. Oh geez, my computer just started playing random audio. Um, I think it would have been to their benefit to give us a few Jedi that we were really really attached to, and I guess that was one of the big issues for me. I would have liked
Hmm.
to have that time focused on one pairing or whatever else, but
Yeah.
I won't belabor that point anymore. Do you have the ranking available? I kind of forget.
Yeah, I'm gonna open that up here, but there is, so we're gonna do email questions and maybe a couple chat questions after this. We did just get a question right now in chat that I think is a good one to start with while I bring up the rankings before
Okay,
we hop into the emails.
sure.
So Sled Drivers asked, "What do you think that strange purple glowing artifact Martian Row had at the end was?" Because I wasn't sure. So did you have any idea there?
I don't even really remember what it was, to be
It was
honest.
like a cylinder he had
Oh,
that he pulled out in front of Loden, and it wasn't his lightsaber. I don't think it was his lightsaber. It was like a 3 hand long cylinder.
yeah. I'm just gonna see if I can read the passage again because I don't know what that was. We did have a reference to a saber staff in this book, which was
Yeah, we
interesting
got like
because
the Sith saber staff.
one of the Jedi has a purified one. But yeah, I'm not sure really. That's like a lot of Marshawn's is like his story is kind of wrapped up in this mystery, but it's so mysterious that like it might hurt the character a bit because we just don't even know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here it is. I've got the paragraph right here. Marchion Rowe reached inside his tunic and pulled out an object of stone and metal, a rod 3 hands long, sorry, carved and incised with symbols, screaming faces, fire chains. It looked as if it had been melted once and reforged. As his hand touched the object, it began to glow a sickly purple color that somehow overpowered the star bright light of the prison deck. The thing was almost as fully to blame for what had happened to his ancestors as the Jedi, but that was an old story, and this was a new time. So yeah, I've got no clue, to be honest. Some sort of Sith artifact, maybe. Like it's definitely seems Force related. Maybe not Jedi or Sith, but
Mm-hmm.
something strange going on there.
There is something strange in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have access. I think, yeah, you had the graphic and that was streamed there, but I don't know where we last used the graphic. I should have found this
Well,
beforehand.
we did our ranking video. Let me just pull that up.
Okay, yeah, that'll be a good place for it. So
We'll
we
have to.
did, the last episode we did was uh, just a Q&A video or a Q&A episode, and there were a bunch of emails that we weren't able to get to for that one. I don't know if we could potentially do a uh, another episode of that, or have one of the kind of off week episodes be doing more of those questions, because we did get some more emails and comments asking when we'd be doing the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, I would be down to do something like that every, like maybe bi-monthly or something,
Yeah, that would
because
probably work.
it was seem to be something that people enjoyed. Also, I just sent you the ranking. Um, I
Cool.
just grabbed it from a video. We'll have to redo it at some point,
Yeah. Well,
but
just a
yeah,
quick.
I'd be down to do that maybe bi-monthly or 4 times a year or something like that.
Yeah. So I think we ended that with more
Yeah,
questions than, or
we
more
started.
emails
Yeah,
than we started with.
definitely.
All right. So do you want to start off? So to remind everyone that we need to make this available as well in like a
Yes.
spreadsheet form, but we
Yeah.
have all the books ranked uh, either S tier, which is the best,
That's
then
like the
A, B,
last
C, D,
commands, the
F.
Plagueis,
Yeah.
etc.
So right now the S tier. I'll just do the lowest, like 3 highest and 3 lowest we have, I think, or a
Sure.
couple highest and lowest. So right now in the S tier, Eck currently just has Last Command, Plagueis, and Heir to the Empire. I have Last Command, Plagueis, Battle Surgeons, Heir to the Empire, and Alphabet 2. Then the bottom of our rankings, Eck has 2 Ds, being the Krytos Trap in Champions of the Force, and then Dark Apprentice in C. For me, I have 1F, which is Champions of the Force. D is Dark Apprentice, and my lowest C is Isard's Revenge.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, for me, this is a high C. I think. I
high
don't think I
C.
can. I don't think I can give it more than that, unfortunately.
So that'd group it in
Um,
with like Solo Command, Truce at Bakura, Isard's Revenge for you.
yeah, yeah. I guess a mid C because I don't think I liked it more than. Don't think I liked it more than Solo Command. Mm, Maybe not more than True Sakura. Like I like the universe world building it does. I don't know. It's hard. Like as I'm talking about it, I'm like, okay, I liked it more than I thought. Then get to get to a topic that I'm negative on. I'm like, okay, I don't like this book at all. What's my problem? But yeah, I think a high C, probably the highest of the C's actually for me.
Yeah. Like for me, I think it's looking at the big picture of the book. I enjoyed it and I enjoyed most of the book, but there were a few of the things we talked about that kind of took me out of it a bit, and
Mhm.
a few individual moments that kind of brought me out of it. Like it didn't have anywhere near the same impact as some of the S's did, where like
For
some of
sure.
those I almost just hasn't been that long since I've read them, and I want to go back and read them, and I don't know when I'll have that urge with this.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm probably gonna go around the same, maybe a mid C. I probably did like it more than Truce at Bakura, so it's probably
Hmm.
in around Jedi Search and Truce at Bakura for me.
I
So
think you're gonna give it a B for sure.
mm.
It would be a B minus for me if that was an option, or a C plus.
Well, I feel like C's aren't books that we dislike. I feel like
Yes, I agree.
they're the ones that we like but are probably more critical of.
Yeah,
Then D's are really where you get to stuff that's
sloggy.
not, yeah.
Yeah, Children of the Jedi, or yeah. So not the best, not the worst. I'm not writing off the era though. I wish they'd put a stronger book first for book one, but you know,
Yeah, it was enough to actually make me more interested in the era, even if there were parts of it that I didn't like as much on its own.
hmm, that's fair. All right, so do we have a few questions we'd like to go through before we end this?
Yes, we have a few emails. Do you have the email open?
I'll open it right now. Yep.
All right. Uh,
I'll just start with Cody. So he says he liked the book much better than Master and Apprentice. I find that almost non-existent response to Jedi body count unbelievable. That's a good point. Over 20 Jedi died and almost nothing is said about it. I feel like we should have gotten more response from the Council about Memorial. That's true. I will say though, I did like the idea that this is the Jedi at like their most selfless. Uh, I thought it was nice to. I don't know. I thought the Jedi were. It's Star Wars can be very, like everything in Star Wars goes to shit basically. Like it's always the
mhm.
Republic going to shit, or the New Republic going to shit, or the Empire just is shit. So it was kind of nice to have just the Jedi as unambiguously good, I guess. But yeah, they probably should have noticed that
Yeah,
people were dying.
yeah. I feel like they kind of got the gravity of the disaster, like the actual name disaster, but then the deaths in the fight with the Nihil will probably be addressed in the next book.
Hmm.
Because the Jedi Council we did get the scene of the Jedi Council kind of debating whether they should do anything, and then it turned into the counselor who died being like, yes, actually, we should do things that are good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and we'll probably get more of a discussion of like what the role of the Jedi ought to be in that, and some more pushback and debate on what their real role is.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Joel has an interesting question. He says, "Do you think Lucasfilm is going to more gradually move the timeline forwards and backwards instead of having massive gaps? Because this is only set 300 years or so in the past, rather than like in Legends, they like the Old Republic's 4,000 years or whatever. So, what do you think?"
Yeah, it does seem like that's kind of the direction they're going. One of the things that does strike me as a little bit odd is some of the way they're talking about how the Republic is coming along here. Seem like they should
Yes.
have been much farther behind, though. So it does feel a bit weird that like there's clearly a very interconnected Republic in like Tor, and it does seem like they're keeping a lot of the timeline for that intact, especially since it's been so long since the Sith have been active, and there were the Great Sith Wars
Hmm.
or the Great Galactic War, whatever they called it in the book,
Hmm.
which was much longer ago. But they're also acting like this is kind of the beginnings of having the Outer Rim connected in a
Yeah.
significant way.
It's not that long. Like
Yeah,
300 years isn't even that long in Earth history, much less like,
yeah.
yeah. I had
So
a problem with that too. Like, That's also kind of my issue. Whereas you can't have anything truly galaxy shaking happen in this time period. I don't think. Well, I guess you can, but it will kind of be weird that it was never mentioned,
Yeah.
being so proximate to the other events of the.
Especially when so many of the characters are actually alive right now. Like
Yeah.
a third of the council by episode 1 is, or a quarter of the council by episode 1
Hmm.
is already established, and maybe we'll even see another one or two. Like of the
Chewbacca alive yet?
option,
I don't think so. He's not, is he?
Chewbacca would have been born just after this, I think,
Okay.
because he was like 180.
Okay.
I forget his exact age, but
Soon.
yeah, he's coming.
He's coming. Oh Lord, he coming.
We're gonna see Grandpa Chewbacca from
Hmm.
the holiday special show up.
Just jerking off nonstop.
Oh.
Anyway, let's see. The next email we have is from Byron. Not really a question, just mentioned that some of this reminded him of Legacy of the Force. And I will also say the Swarm War, come on, with the Stealth X's communicating with Force impressions, radio clicks. The only thing missing was the Shadow Bombs. Yes. No Force. Well, they don't have Shadow Bombs. They do have their own kind of Force weaponry where they use the lightsaber to turn on the vehicles, which I thought that was cool. I like the vehicles quite a bit. And the long beam was a cool one as well. But not the Jedi vehicle, just the Republic one. Simon has what he describes as a long question.
So Simon's basically looking for advice on how to most efficiently collect and buy, or find and buy, all the Star Wars books. So he is asking how to kind of find a list of them and then how to find them. The Del Rey timeline is actually, if you can just find the Del Rey timeline from Legends, that actually has basically all the books on it, and the new Del Rey timeline from.
The only thing you'll miss is some
canon.
of the, like the young reader books and stuff.
Yeah, so it's probably like there's 170 something between the Legends and canon timeline, so that's probably a good place to start. And then you can start looking for like the young reader ones, and junior reader ones. Then if you want to get into comics, those are really hard to find, some of the older ones. But once COVID is not a thing anymore, hopefully someday, I do recommend starting by going to any local used bookstores.
Definitely.
Because they are just repositories for like 30 plus copies of Dark Force Rising.
Yeah, that, and for some reason my local bookstore has like 16 copies of every book in the Corellian trilogy.
Yeah, there were a lot of those. The general rule that I seem to come across is that you will find an abundance of the middle of every trilogy.
Star Wars is interesting too because if you want to do there are people that try to do the full Legend collection, like not just the books, but there's a lot of like obscure Legends media, like stuff that was only printed in like one magazine or that's quasi canon and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think there are a few YouTubers who do that. So I'd look into that. I'm not sure of any of them in particular. So if you know, maybe give a content on this YouTube video or comment on the YouTube video. But yeah, it can be fun. There's even I saw once there's like the obscurity iceberg of like the deeper you go, the more obscure it gets for Legend stuff. And there's some stuff that's hard to find. But
Yeah.
thank you very much for the email.
Yeah. So
we got a question
used bookstores.
from Adam.
There's also the one other place that I'd recommend looking are the kind of used bookstore storefronts on Amazon. If you can't find them somewhere else, usually there will be used copies available on there, and you can get them very cheap. I got a bunch of mine from that, and Ethan is saying Marvel Unlimited has all the old Star Wars comics, so thank you, Ethan.
Yeah, that's how I read mine, through Marvel Unlimited.
Yeah.
There's also like the newspaper comics as well, which you've got to buy physical copies of them, like the old newspaper weeklies, which are really good.
Last year I ordered about 100 books that I was able to find, and I probably paid less than $1 each. I paid more in shipping than I did for books. So if you can find them, some of them are cheap. Comic books usually are a bit more expensive.
Honestly, though, with comic books, you can find them if you know where to look. If you look up, listen, I'm not telling you to do this, but if you already own a copy of the comic book and you can't find it, and you look up "read comic name free, you'll probably find it.
Yeah, I mean more for like collecting a physical
no, I know.
copy purposes.
For sure.
But if you just want to read them, there's definitely ebooks available for everyone to buy an ebook.
Yes.
Uh,
Adam basically asked the question of, do you think it's possible, or would they have continued the Dawn of the Jedi material? And yeah, I think they were going to. I'm not sure. I don't know much about that era, but I assume there was more story to tell.
Yeah, I don't think that would have replaced any of the bigger projects, or would have taken priority over the bigger projects. Because like the big reason that the canon reboot happened with Disney is because the sequel trilogy was going to be made, and that was going to happen regardless. Because it seemed like those movies were getting made regardless. So something would have happened, and that kind of threw off some of what was happening. Because there was going to be, what was it, the Sword of the Jedi series afterwards, and
Yeah.
there was going to be the earlier stuff. So maybe we'll get back, and maybe even some of that stuff. The earlier you go, the more of a chance you have of stuff being wholesale reincorporated. Because we keep getting nods to like Tor, especially, and then with Tor brought in, some of that might bring in like KOTOR and KOTOR 2, which might also bring in Tales of the Jedi and all that. Because they don't seem to want to do the higher profile media in that period, so they may as well keep it in. But that's just my opinion, man.
Yep. Caesar asks, hi, Eck, just Eck in particular. Sorry, Corey. He wants to know how Gideon beat Bo-Katan. I'm going to guess that Gideon probably didn't beat Bo-Katan in direct battle. I think they probably just invaded and took the Darksaber.
Yeah.
I'm just reading this message from Kim. I really want to know for the next podcast what you guys would like to be integrated to Star Wars here. If the Yuuzhan Vong were an integral part in order to connect to the EU. So basically, she's asking, would we like the Yuuzhan Vong to be recanonized, and how? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know that I necessarily would. I'd like having another big threat later after the sequel trilogy period, after the New Republic gets reestablished, would be cool. I don't think it necessarily has to be the Yuuzhan Vong. My attachment to the Yuuzhan Vong is more the NJO and the stories that it had, more than the Vong themselves. So, to the extent that they were fun as villains, I think their story was already told there. And I'd be just as happy to have something new show up.
I like the extra galactic threats. I think that's a fun idea.
Keep that element.
There's lots of mystery there. The good thing about the Yuuzhan Vong that canon hasn't nailed yet, maybe hasn't even tried to nail, is that they commit to they introduce a scary alien force and they commit to it. And like canon has a few times like introduced some alien, whether it's the Nihil, which isn't a race but a group of people, or the ones from the Thrawn books, and they haven't really stuck with them yet. So that's kind of the main thing that I would like to see is a non-imperial enemy. I don't like the non-force stuff for the Yuuzhan Vong. I'm not super attached to the biotechnology, really. I like the idea of a faction that's been widely duped by their leader and can thus partially be redeemed. But yeah.
Yeah. I don't even remember what I was going to say, and I was thinking about it 3 seconds ago. So yeah. The grid. much like the story group forgot about the Grisks. I forgot about.
Yeah, I forgot their name too. That's why I just said the enemies from the Thrawn books.
Yeah. So maybe I really thought the Grisks were going to be a bigger thing than they ended up being, and maybe they're still going to be a big thing. I don't know.
Just poor Timothy Zahn. The man's got nothing to work with. He's got 2 days in Rebels, and they're like, make 6 books out of this. It's like, yes, okay. New aliens.
So, did you read the tweets from the Del Rey guy about the development of the timeline?
Like the actual timeline in the book, you mean?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty interesting kind of laying out what their thought process is for how they kind of laid out the start of the books. I can't remember. I don't have a link to it, but there was the talk in that about like how technically the original Thrawn or the Thrawn trilogy in the Galactic Civil War period, the new one is technically not a trilogy. It's 3 standalone books. Yeah. So he could have just done whatever he wanted in each one. It's his fault.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. Like it's true, and it's also true that the first one's good and the other ones kind of suck.
Yeah.
But it's not Timothy Zahn's fault either. The man's milking a stone here for. It's like I got nothing.
At least, yeah, he has more freedom with the Chaos Rising or the Ascendancy trilogy, and I really enjoyed the first book. So
He does, but I still just feel like nothing he writes is going to be picked up anywhere else.
he definitely seems to want that anyways.
Yeah,
Like,
but it's just like
when he
now
wrote
he's
Vision
got
of
a
the
lot less
Future
room
and
to play with because he's not like the big dog anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But like when he wrote Vision of the Future and Spectre of the Past, it's basically here's two 500-page books about how everyone else got my shit wrong.
Yeah, and those are books where, like, besides for Luke, like, not a lot actually happens.
No.
Especially like at the end of the day, it's like there's almost a big war, but there's not. It's like
Yeah.
Thrawn is rumored to return, but he doesn't.
Yeah, so we will we'll have
They're so
more
good,
question and answer periods in the future. Sorry,
Yeah.
there's a huge amount of emails that we weren't able to get to. We will do our best to get to as many as possible. That is tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. Our next episode is going to be, depending on scheduling, we're either going to be doing the astronomy episode with Evil Bob the Bob next week, so that'd be the 21st, or we'll be doing it the 28th. So we're going to just figure out the scheduling. If you have any questions for that about Star Wars and physics, you can send that to tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. That's our other email address. So yeah, any questions you have there, the sooner the better, so that Bob has a chance to compile any materials he needs to
Man's
answer
got to
the
rub
questions.
his brain cells together.
So yeah. Any other final thoughts before we go and get drunk, play Fall Guys, and Beerio Kart?
I love my life. That's about it.
Are your feet covered in dog puke?
No, because she puked like under the table, and it was pretty solid. So I picked it up, and I'm just gonna go Swiffer before, like I cleaned it all up, but there's like still the residual like slime there that I want gone. So
Residual Slime's a good name
for a band or something.
for a band, for an Xbox Live
Charlie.
gamer tag, like XX420 Residual Slime.
Next time somebody asks you, chat. Next time someone asks you how your date went, if you went on a date last night, just respond with residual slime.
Okay. Well, with that, thank you for listening, everyone. Next week we'll be back on the EckhartsLadder channel, and
Hooray!
available wherever podcasts